Today's topic is a very important topic in chess for beginners. Today we will study the golden rules of chess. So this rule tells us that how to begin a chess game for beginner player. Occupy center with d4 or e4 pawn. Central pawns control key squares. To illustrate this point, we are moving to a chessboard. Now this is the initial setup of a chessboard. So these four squares d4, d5 and e4, e5 are the key squares of a chessboard because these squares are centrally placed. So these squares are the key squares. So golden rule tells us that always start your game with d4 or e4. So what is the implication of this point? As we play d4, we are controlling two key squares, namely this one and this one. This one and this one and this one. So c5 and e5 squares we are controlling by playing d4. So these are all central squares, so it is a key move. Naturally, black will play d5 to stop the further progress of d4 pawn, and also the later push of e4 because this pawn is controlling this square also. And another move, suggested move is e4. The logic is same. It is controlling these two squares. This one is the central square, and black immediately respond with e5 to stop the further progress of this pawn, and also controlling these squares for later d4 push. The next point is development of pieces with threat. To explain this point, we are moving to the chessboard. First of all, what do we mean by development? Development means activating pieces. The pieces are initially placed in a certain way. After starting the game, our first priority is to activate the pieces. So let's see what we are going to see. Now this is the initial position of the chessboard, of a chessboard. So d4, e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f6. So this knight f3 move is called development of pieces because here at g1 the piece was idle. So when we are activating the piece to f3, so it is acting and it is also attacking this pawn. So this knight is defending this pawn. This is called the development of pieces. Always we should try to develop our pieces as fast as possible. it is said that always try to develop your knight first. There is a logic between this behind this point. To develop a knight, we don't need to push any pawn, but to develop a bishop, we need an open diagonal. So it is always recommended to develop our knight, as knight is the only piece which can jump over the pawn structure. So let's discuss with the board. So this is the initial starting lineup. So let's start with e4. Black respond with e5. Then knight f3. Always develop your knight before your bishop, because when you want to develop your bishop, you need an open diagonal. So as we are opening with d4 or e4, one of the diagonal is opened, but it is always suggested to develop your knight first, as it can jump over the pawn structure. So always try to develop your knight first, then bring your bishop out. This is one of the golden rules. Let's move to next point. Centralize your knights. This is a very important point. Some beginner players develop their knight on the edge. Always remember a word. A knight on a rim is dim. If you place your knight on the edge of a board, its power will be reduced. Always develop your knight along the central squares, so it can have its most powerful nature. So always place your knight on the center of the board. This knight will control 8 vital squares. Never develop your knight or put your knight on the edge, because it will reduce its capacity. So we play with 1d4, d5. Many players develop their knight here. Now, in this position, you can find out that this knight is controlling this square, this square, this square, and this square. So, when you are placing your knight on a corner, any one corner, definitely its power will be reduced. So, always try to develop your knight on the center. Instead of playing knight to a3, always try to develop your knight through knight to c3. Because this knight now is controlling this square, this square, this square, this square, this square, this square, all 8, sorry, mm, this square, all 8 square it is controlling, starting from this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. So in this case, this knight is controlling these all squares. And if you develop your knight with knight to a3, in this case it is controlling only these 4 squares. So its power is reduced to 50%. That's why golden rule tells us always develop our knight along the center of the board, and always try to place the knight on the center. Now we are going to the next rules. So this rule tells us to avoid premature queen moves. What does it mean? This means never bring your queen too early in the game. Why? Let's discuss. This is the starting position. Now we play e4. Our opponent respond with d5. We capture, our opponent capture with queen. So he is bringing his queen too early, which is against the golden rules. So we immediately attack its queen by placing knight to c3. Goes back by giving a check. We are developing our bishop, blocking, develop its knight, sorry, develop its knight, or this one. So we immediately develop it. After development, we castle. So look at this structure. The white pieces are well ahead in development. Only this bishop is left for development. The king has been castled. The knight came out. Bishop came out. Queen is safe. Okay. So when you bring your queen too early in the game, your opponent always try to attack it, and by those attacks, it will develop its pieces. So that is advantageous for opponent. So always try to not to bring your queen too early in the game. At least take 10 to 15 moves. At least take 10 moves and develop all your pieces. Then bring your queen according to your plan. Please do not bring queen too early. It is one of the golden rules. This is another important point. This is another important point. So this point tells us that always castle early at the king side. Castle is a specially built house which is used during war. It is super strong. So when you put your king inside castle, the king is safe. So uh, after starting the game, always try to castle early the king side. So this is the starting lineup: e4 or d4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5. Now white castles, now black castles. This is the ideal strategy. Now, why king side? Because if you castle queen side, then you have to move your queen, which is against the golden rules. You have to move all these pieces. Okay, that's fine. Piece development is good, but queen movement early is not a good option. So it is preferable you castle king side. So this is another golden rules which we should follow. So our next rule is pawn structure. So we some players I saw some beginner players always push randomly pawn. They use random pawn movement. That is dangerous because pawn is a shield. Pawn wall is a safety for king. If you push random pawn, that structure is will be breaked and some weaknesses will be created. So pawn pushing is not a good option. Always plan and then play. Pawn structure is a safety for your king. Always mind it. Let's start with e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop, bishop c5, now castle. This pawn structure is a wall, this pawn wall is a safety for your king. So after castle, black plays knight to c6, and if you play h4 for any without any reason, so this particular move will creating some weakness and weakness to your king side. This you played this for nothing. So this kind of play is dangerous because you have to ensure the most safety to your king. So if you play pawn randomly and weakens the king side, then your opponent will enter and attack your king, and maybe it can checkmate your king very easily. So don't push random pawns. Play as per your plan and try to maintain some pawn structure so that your king will be safe. So this is another important point. This is regarding castling. This rules tells us that never move your king early in the game so it can lose the right to castle. Let's explain it with an example. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, c3, d4, takes, takes, check. Now, in this particular position, if we move our king here, so castle right is gone. We can't castle anymore. Because if your king moves, you can't castle. And in check, you also can't castle. So in this case, at the beginning of your game, if you got a check from your opponent, always try to block it with your own piece. Don't move your king. If you once move your king, the king will lose the right to castle. Always remember it. This is a very important point. I found many beginners player who always try to move their king in the beginning of the game after getting a check from its opponent. So don't do this. If you do this, you will lose the right to castle. Once your king is moved, you can't castle. And castle is a very important move for king's safety. If you get a check from your opponent, try to block it with other pieces. If you have no options, then you should move your king. But until unless you have options, try to use that option. Try to block it. Try to capture the attacking piece. Don't move your king, as it can lose the right to castle. These are all about golden rules of chess. Hope you enjoyed it.